welcome once again to David Hathaway, Eurovision. And so much is going on, David, at the moment. We got to mention the name of Mr. Putin. And people have, well, they've lost all trust in him. It appears that the Alaska visit with he and Trump, he looks as though he's taking advantage of it. And Trump is not pleased, is he?
Well, Trump isn't pleased, but I largely blame Trump because in all the meetings that he's had with regard to Putin, I mean, he's talked to him on the telephone, and of course, in Alaska, they had a personal meeting. Now, all that's done is given Putin credibility. And what we're concerned about is Trump is not doing what he says. I mean, he said that he would impose massive sanctions. He doesn't. And he keeps referring to Putin in very friendly terms, saying, I get on well with him, we're friends together, and so on. There's something very serious and worrying behind this, because it looks to me as if Putin has got some hold over Trump. I think Trump's being blackmailed.
Could be. Certainly, the only threat he's got left, apart from pressing the nuclear button, is sanctions. And why, as you say, hasn't he done it?
I just don't know why he's not doing it, because, I mean, we're acting in the West and we have put sanctions on, and the Ukrainians are doing a good job. I love what they're doing, because what they're trying to do is they're not out to kill people. What they're doing is destroying Russia's means of fighting. And they've targeted, of course, the oil and the gas. And the result is there's a massive fuel shortage now, which affects, of course, their military transport. And if the Ukraine keeps doing this, sooner or later, the Russians won't be able to fight, except with drones and the missiles. And at the moment, that's the big danger, is they're using the massive missiles, which are causing the damage. Because, I mean, the last time I was in Kiev, while I was there, Kiev was attacked, and I went the following morning. I went with my staff over there to see the damage done. And what they had done is they'd hit apartment buildings, and the road was closed. We couldn't get any closer because of the rubble that was spread all over the road. And then they hit a car wash. I mean, of course, that's very critical. You know, car washes are so important too.
I can imagine.
But I mean, that was the level of the attack. But now they are being much more specific. They have hit the Ukrainian parliament building in Kiev. That's serious. And they also did hit the British consul building. And I think we have to react to that.
Well, does Europe react to anything?
Well, they're reacting, but not in the strongest way. Yes, they're reacting. I mean, what's happened is this is the crazy thing. Putin's whole argument about attacking Ukraine was to push NATO further away and to set up a buffer zone between him and NATO. But what's happened is that more countries have joined NATO, and also the whole of NATO is massively rearming. I mean, Poland in particular, they're developing a massive military, far bigger than ours or Germany. But they're on the borders, you see. But they have to do something. I mean, I would look at Kaliningrad, because, you know, Kaliningrad is on the Baltic coast, and it's Putin's only access to the Baltic Sea. And I would cut that off completely and starve that. I wouldn't go in militarily, but I would starve it into submission, because that they can do, and that affects Putin. But you see, what's concerning me is, we're working in Central Asia, and I've just come back from Kazakhstan. Now, Kazakhstan was a vital part of the Soviet Union. They had their space station there. But now Kazakhstan is rejecting Russia and is turning to us in the West. And we've got British. When I was out there, we had the British military training their army. It's advanced that way. Then you've got Azerbaijan and Armenia that under the Soviet Union were fighting each other, and friends of mine were killed. But they've made peace, stopped the fighting, and they have come to join us in the West. They are Armenia and Azerbaijan. In fact, I should be in Azerbaijan later, and later this year. I've got big meetings, so I've got a big stadium booked. But they are moving away from the Soviet Union. And gradually, I think what we're going to see is a breakup of the former Soviet Union. Chechnya is another country, because Kazarov, or whatever his name is, who's the leader there and who supported Putin, he's dying. And but what really is serious is that Russia fought 2 wars in Chechnya. The first one they didn't win, but the second one they just totally destroyed Grozny, the capital, wiped it out. And you see what Russia's policy is, and it contradicts what they're saying. They're saying that in Ukraine they want to rescue Russian-speaking people and take it over and adopt part of the Donbass and so on. But what they're doing is every place that they're conquering, they're totally destroying, driving the population out, but destroying the cities. And they say it can take more than 10 years. And the other problem there is with all the mines that are laid in the ground. They say it's worse than anywhere in the world. And they say it'll take 10 years to clear just the mines from the ground. So Putin is not welcoming the people and saying, look, if you come and join Russia, we'll make life better for you. Well, he says that. But in actual fact, everywhere where he's taken control, the situation is worse. I mean, there's some places now where they've got, in occupied territory, where they've got no water because somebody blew up the water main. And they've got no water, they've got very little food, and they're struggling. So, you see, this was the mistake that Hitler made. I'm old enough well, you are, but I'm old enough to remember what happened when Hitler attacked Russia. And it's interesting because the same thing is happening. He's saying, we all thought that when Hitler attacked Russia, well, he thought that people under communism would welcome the Germans as freedom from communism. But the Germans were so brutal with their persecution of the land that they captured that the people then hated the Germans more than the communists. And you've got a similar situation now, that what the effect of what they've done in places like Bucha and so on, which is documented, very documented, the people now are more afraid of Russia, and they're more inclined to want to fight against Russia because they can see what Russia will do. And of course, the whole history, I saw something on the internet a couple of nights ago where somebody actually ran through the history of the Ukraine. And Ukraine's always, it's never been really seriously part of Russia, only for very, very short periods in time. It was under Stalin, they took it, but they took it when it was an independent nation. And what you've got to look at, and I didn't realize that, I learned a lot the other night, because the most critical period of time in Ukraine is following the First World War in 1919. And you have to go back and study the political and geographical layout after the end of the First World War. So history repeats itself.
It does, and I'm thinking of the progress, if you can call it that, of Russia within Ukraine for the last 2 years. It's not altered very much, David. It's come to a full stop practically.
Well, it has, you're right. I mean, somebody estimated how much they've actually captured in the 3 years of the war, and it comes to 1 point something of the territory, 1.4% of the territory. Now, if it's taken them 3.5 years to conquer that, they reckon it'll take them 50 years to conquer the whole Ukraine. And yet they're still shouting. Medvedev, who's a nasty man, and Lavrov, they're both nasty, but Medvedev particularly, Medvedev for a short time was president.
Yeah.
Because Putin ran into this number of years he could be in office. So he allowed Medvedev to take over for 4 years, and then he pushed him out, went back in. And Medvedev is saying the most stupid things. And he's saying, in effect, that Russia wants to conquer the whole of Europe.
Mm.
And then the latest that I've heard today is that the Russians are complaining that the West are sending germs into Russia and poisonous plants into Russia. I mean, I've never heard anything so ridiculous. But what they're covering up is the fact that in the military, in the Russian military, there is very serious illness. And it's devastating the military because they don't have the medical supplies and resources. Really, it's weakening the whole of the Russian military. So, yes, I understand what might be behind Medvedev trying to cover up their own weakness. But the whole situation, when you look at the world, well,
I'll tell you what, you've mentioned the world. Let's mention Poland, because they've been on high alert this last night. With 4 at least drones coming over. We don't know whether they were armed or not. Now, it could have been an accident, or it could have been aimed at Ukraine, sort of a backdoor. We don't know, but I think really they're deliberately pushing it, David, to see what reaction the West would get.
Oh, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was a deliberate provocation. But what I've discovered is that I think they said there were 43 drones went, but they're not the small personal view ones carrying a grenade to drop on some unsuspecting soldier. They were carrying big warheads. And if they'd struck the buildings, they would have killed a lot of people. Now, that's a critical point. So it was not just some small drones. They were serious missiles with great capacity. They did hit one building, but fortunately nobody was killed. But the Polish are trying to rescue or to recover some of the downed drones, because you know what the Russians are saying now, don't you? They're actually now saying, probably Medvedev, that it's a Ukrainian false flag and that the drones were from Ukraine in order to provoke Poland to join the war. That's a load of rubbish, because they've already got some of these drones. They can tell where they're from, because, I mean, most of the Russian ones have got Chinese markings on them. You know that, don't you?
There you go. There's all sorts of stories coming out. I'll tell you one thing that people don't know about, and that's the fact that there's the USSR Army are advertising desperately for new troops, and they're up offering up to £70,000 equivalent in rubles for
Yeah.
them to join. That's how desperate. Now, there's no way they're going to pay out. It might get some conscripts, but I can't see them affording that.
Well, they can't afford it, no, because a lot of the troops at the front that were recruited are complaining that their wives don't get the pay. Because, I mean, Russia is bankrupt. How can they afford? They don't have the money. And the more they print, the more inflation hits. And so, no, I don't know how Russia can continue and how they can talk about attacking Poland or the Baltic states or anywhere in Europe. They're overstretched now. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the tanks. Apparently, they've run out of weapons in Russia. It's
Maybe
so.
that was why they had the Axis of Evil conference with our friends from North Korea and China and India. Certainly, China can and have done given arms.
Oh, yes. Oh, the Chinese are. I mean, in the West, we've traced the route that they're going. They are definitely going in like North Korea. But I don't think India is doing that. But the main support is coming from North Korea and China. But now I'm fully aware of the problem with China. The problem is when we were working there in the early 90s, there was almost a war situation between Russia and China. We were in Blagoveshchensk, which is on the river Amur, which separates Russia and China. And the Russians had a gunboat to prevent the Chinese coming across. And in actual fact, the whole of Putin's argument about reclaiming territory, a lot of territory was Chinese, and the Russians took it from the Chinese. And for example, the whole of Vladivostok, that area, that coast, which is so critical to Russia because it's a deep sea port, that was Chinese. And what we think is happening is China doesn't want the war to stop. What she's wanting to do is weaken Russia so that when it gets to a certain level, China will be able to take back territory. And historically, it was theirs. So I think Putin is playing a very dangerous game. And a lot of reports, certainly in England, are that Putin is junior to the Chinese. He's a stupid boy and he's going to be caught out by the Chinese. Oh, and I don't know if you know this, also, Japan has entered the war. Japan. And what they've done is they are laying claim to the, is it the Kuril Islands or something, off the of the Russian coast. And this is what's going to happen. Russia is now so weak, it can't fight on any more fronts, and people are going to be taking territory. And the fact that Japan is starting to do that, it's very interesting.
Yes, this very day, Japan has announced that it's reached an agreement for these ultra fast missiles, which very few people have.
Yes.
And this is all part of the scenario. David, it's not an easy time for anybody. Poland, we've mentioned. It's not an easy time for you in Kiev with your office there, with your staff. I mean, can you still get out there for your Christian evangelistic efforts?
Well, yes, but what we've been concentrating on is prayer more than the actual evangelism. We're holding up the evangelism until the war's over. And we're anticipating it will be over this year. And I'm also believing that every Russian soldier will leave Ukraine, and then there'll be a massive celebration, which we can then use for evangelism. But the interesting thing is, it's the growing move for people turning to Christ. And the real reason we had such success in Russia in the 90s was because of the situation there. And I do believe that what's happening in Ukraine is more and more people are going to the churches because they need prayer. And it's significant. But it's not only happening there. As you know, we're working in Central Asia, in a lot of Muslim countries, but we're finding that thousands, literally thousands of Muslims are turning to Christ. They are in my meetings. And we're working in Kazakhstan, in the Muslim area, with pastors and churches that were all Muslim converts. And it's given us an open door. But I saw a report, I don't know if I can still see it, but I saw a report listing the number of Muslims converting to Christ. And I've got a list here actually. Just listen to this, Rodney. This is where Muslims in Muslim countries are turning to Christ. You've got, for example, in Iran, they reckon there's now more than 1 million secret Christians, and we're assisting with that side. Thousands in Afghanistan, even in Saudi Arabia, they're turning to Christ because they're disillusioned with Islam. And even in France, where Muslims are quite predominant, they're quite large. I think about 20% of the population in France are Muslim. They're turning to Christ there. And so what's happening is there is quite a spiritual revival going on. And even here in Britain, I don't know what it is in Spain, but here in Britain, the striking thing is young men are going to church and they're reading the Bible. Now, for years, as you and I know, women predominated in the church. Yeah, it's true. But now the situation is turning, and all my friends in London tell me young men in university, particularly in university, are reading the Bible and they're attending church. So that's very significant. There is a move, and I don't know, I'm praying over this. I might actually start to do some work back in England.
Well, I was going to mention this, David, finally, because the last time we talked, you were about to go up your annual pilgrimage up your mountain and seek some guidance that way. And you'd even thought at one stage of focusing more attention on Britain as being a more needy place.
Well, it is at the moment. Britain is very needy, but yes, what happened was, I had two big meetings celebrating 75 years of ministry, which is unique. I don't think any other ministry celebrated not 75 years consecutive ministry, but that's because I started when I was 18. I was as you know, I pastored the church when I was in Bible college, aged 18. But what happened in our meetings was that people have commented to me about the fact that we have used the old-time Christian songs. And I'm very concerned because we have a lot of modern worship, but it doesn't have the depth or the theological background of the songs that I grew up with. The songs I grew up with, there was a melody to it which you could sing and remained in your mind, but the words had a message. Today, it's like there's nothing to it.
We're in the me society, David. It's all about me. Never mind God, he comes second.
Oh yes. But I was very impressed because when I'm not preaching anywhere, when I'm at home, I go to a big church in Bradford. I don't go to the local one. They don't like me there. In any case, I'm too well known. The big church in Bradford, they've got more than 2,000. I think it's about 3,000. In fact, they're now having to have two services on a Sunday to accommodate the crowds. But it means I'm not known there. And what I love, Rodney, is I want to go in the church, sit on the back row, and not be asked to do anything. You know, I just want to enjoy the service, which I do. Yes, we've got some of our supporters there, but I deliberately don't introduce myself to the leaders because I just want to be Joe Bloggs in sitting in the seat. And the last time I was there, I couldn't get there this last Sunday, but the Sunday before, I was really amazed. Big church, um, more than 2,000 members, because if they've got about 2,000 seats, but if they're going to have two services, they must be getting 3,000, 4,000. And that in Bradford, a Muslim city, is
I
quite.
was going to mention that as well. I mean, you're in the center of things there. And
Oh, yeah.
does it need a battle to refresh the Christians?
Well, it does, but I tell you what really touched me was they had an outside preacher in who's young. Yes, they said he was an evangelist, but I tell you what, he preached on holiness. That's the first time in many, many years, especially in a large church, where he preached on holiness. And I was very, very impressed because unfortunately, with too many of the big churches, especially in America, it's all the prosperity message, the
Yeah.
prosperity gospel, which shocks me because their teaching is absolutely contrary to scripture. But to actually sit under somebody who's preaching on holiness really touched me.
It's a
So,
great temptation to get a bigger congregation or a bigger audience, however you turn it, to take the altar out and put stage there and sing songs, as you mentioned, whose lyrics are a bit questionable.
oh, yes. But you see, what troubles me is, I mean, it's, well, let's mention Joel Osteen in America, in Lakewood Church in Houston. I know him. I knew his father. In fact, his father was a good friend to me after I came out of the prison when people were rejecting me. And I had a good relationship with him. And the father, John Osteen, and Joel traveled in my car in Eastern Europe with me. So I know them and I know Joel. And I'm a bit disappointed that they're not really bringing out the full truth that they should do, because they're appealing to the crowds. But you see, we're facing a big challenge, Rodney. And sometime maybe I can talk to you on another program about this. But the way the world is, there's absolutely no question we're getting very close to the return of Christ. And even in Israel, and by the way, the Israeli government are paying for me to fly out in November. I'm going as their guest. They're paying all my expenses. And to me, that's very significant because of what's going on in Israel at the moment. But I really do believe that all the signs are that we're getting very close to the return of Christ. In fact, people on the internet are predicting times. They're wrong because Jesus said no man will know the day or the hour. But people are conscious and I'm conscious that we're getting nearer, and we've got to talk to people about the kingdom and be prepared for the coming of Jesus, because it's going to be a shock to the world when Jesus is coming back suddenly without any warning. It's going to be a shock. But all that's going on, even in the war between Russia and Ukraine, I think is part of the end time events. And certainly what's happening in Israel is predicted, because what Israel will do is, by what she's doing, slowly people are turning against Israel because of what's going on in Gaza. Now, I support Israel, and I know biblically why they're doing it. But from a political point of view, it's hardly excusable. I mean, a lot of people are talking about a two-state solution out there. But that's rubbish because the Israelis would have welcomed a two-state solution if it could have been done. But Hamas hate Israel and won't tolerate Israel. And the whole determination of the Palestinian movement is to destroy Israel. And so, in actual fact, the Jewish people are fighting for survival, which, when you look at the Bible, it had to do for the last 4,000 years. So it's nothing new, even in the time of Jesus. And there's a whole lot that we can talk about on that subject.
David, we've completely run out of time. We've got 3 programs, I calculate, that we can mention, that we've mentioned in the last 2 or 3 minutes. So we'll get back to you as soon as we're able to. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating. And you yourself, finally, are you at peace about all this thing, or does it churn you up a bit?
No, I'm at peace. I'm at peace because before talking to you, I was preaching my weekly message, and I'd gone to the Psalms to be at peace because that's where I found peace when I was in the prison. And in the Word of God, there is peace. And for us as Christians, we need to be at peace. I'll talk about it in the next program.
Thank you. See you shortly.
Okay. God bless you.